This careless motorcyclist just dropped his EJEAS X10 in the middle of the road. Watch as an unsuspecting civilian runs it over with their vehicle. For some reason in reverse too. And then again, except this time they decide to stop on top of it. Despite the abuse this device has been put through, it somehow still manages to function. Now that is what I call durability. I want to know if the EJEAS X10 is worth the upgrade over the EJEAS Q8. I've been using the Q8 for the past few years and I absolutely love it, so the bar is pretty high. A few months ago, EJEAS kindly sent me out an X10 unit to review. Right off the bat, the X10 presents us with a couple of improvements over the Q8. The first being the strength of the connections in the harness. These connections are strong. An issue I had with the Q8 is that these connections would wriggle themselves loose over time. I would lose audio from one ear and it's a real hassle because you have to take your gloves off, pull the lining off your helmet out and try and fix these connections on the fly. Another major improvement is the magnetic mount. As you can see, that attaches to its base via a magnet, whereas the Q8 uses its standard slot system. This makes life so much easier when it comes to removing the device from your helmet for cleaning, charging, or safekeeping. So how does the X10 perform in the real world?
All right, gang, let's see how this goes in terms of connecting to the phone. So I'm just gonna take it off its mount there, which I can do because it's a magnet. Gonna press the on button, it's on, and I'm gonna check if it's paired with my phone. But we can put that back on the magnet. Now mind you, I've done all the app setup. I'm not hearing music though.
One thing I did run into with the X10 is sometimes it wouldn't connect properly to my phone and I would have to repair it as if I was pairing it again for the first time. For some reason it fixed itself and it only lasted for like the first 4 weeks.
All right guys, let's road test this thing.
In terms of solo riding, I've been using the X10 for all sorts of applications. Urban riding, freeways, country roads, commuting, recreational rides, you name it. And I must say, for solo riding, it's really similar to the Q8. And that's not a bad thing because the Q8 was really good at what it did. The music is strong, the navigation comes through crisp and clear, there are no complaints at all really. But there was definitely an improvement, and a major one at that, and that is the voice assistant. The voice assistant actually works on the X10. Whether it was the Q8's microphone or its firmware's inability to interpret my voice, it didn't work with my phone's Google Assistant. The X10, however, is pretty bang on. While riding, I can activate the assistant and get it to do whatever an assistant does. Call someone specific, open up maps and navigate to a specific address, open up Spotify and play a specific song, all without touching my phone. It's pretty cool. On top of this, the X10 has its own voice assistant. So if you say, hey EJEAS, you can then control some device-specific functions such as the mesh intercom. I'll use it for a few hours each week on my daily commutes and recreational rides and then charge it at the end. I've never had it run flat. It was also able to remain on 5G intercom for at least 7 hours across 2 days while playing music, and it didn't even come close to running flat. This was tested during my recent road trip with Nick. You can go watch that on the channel. All right, moving on to the group ride scenario. This is where we get to test the 5G intercom and the mesh system.
So far, so good. For this purpose, with a fellow rider right in front of me, we've got clear audio, no issues with interference or the loss of signal. All right, gang, we're gonna do a little bit of a distance test. We're not moving fast and Nick's staying completely still, so there should be no excuses here. Oh, I still can't hear you that well, actually. Let's say 120 to be safe, because now I can hear you. 120 meters, but you got to keep in mind, guys, this is with no interference from things such as other cars, trees, or buildings. I think and also the fact that we're not moving right now, so in a real world scenario, this distance would be much tighter and much less than 120 meters. But what we're now going to do is a channel switch to see whether that changes things. So there are 5 channels. We're on channel 1. I'm going to switch to channel 2, and so is Nick in a couple of seconds. And then We're going to see if that alters the distance or not. Okay, we're on channel 1. I think I'm happy to conclude that at 120 meters with the antenna up, and having gone through a few of the channels, realizing they don't make much of a difference in a scenario like this where there are no interference possibilities. But when you're out on a public road, I think that the channels may make a difference then. Okay, we are out on the road for some real world testing of the EJEAS X10. Now Nick is ahead of me. I'm gonna let him collect a bit of distance, and we're gonna find out when he loses connection with me. I didn't expect it to be around a similar distance as it was on the farm, because we're now in motion at around 80 k's an hour and Nick can still hear me. I guess the next stage of this test is to see how it fares in the Dandenong Ranges with all the foliage, the bends, with much more opportunity for interference and, you know, losing line of sight through corners, that kind of thing. I do anticipate we'll have to be a lot closer together for the EJEAS to work its magic.
I was right. The distance was dramatically reduced, so we couldn't stray too far from each other without losing connection. Overall though, the mesh performed well. Audio was clear, and if the connection dropped, it was quickly re-established. There is a clear limitation here, and it is distance. Now the X10 has newer mesh technology compared to the Q8, but it still is not that far when you put it into a real-world application, such as Nick and I riding out in the hills, where there's lots of foliage, lots of bends, and where we lose line of sight fairly quickly. One thing I love about the mesh system on the X10 is that it automatically reduces the volume of your music when you speak or when someone else speaks in the mesh. This is such a neat feature. You don't have to fiddle with your volume dial, and you never miss what someone else says because your music was blaring too loud. The 5G intercom requires a little more setup every time you use it, as opposed to the mesh. To get it to work, you need to create a voice group manually in the app. You only need to do that once, but every time you've turned your device on and turned it back on again, you need to actually go into the app and join the call through the app. It doesn't automatically hook you up to that call as it would if you were on the mesh connection. One thing we found is that we had to speak a lot louder when we were on 5G intercom compared to when we were on mesh. Another thing is the delay is noticeable. So I'd say something and it would take a fair amount of time for the other person to actually hear it. And this is extremely noticeable in a real world scenario. It kind of does impact your ability to have a smooth conversation. It's not like mesh where it's device to device. With the 5G intercom, your voice goes through your microphone, through your device, up into the internet, and then it gets beamed back into the other person's device and through their speakers. It's not just straight A to B or intercom to intercom. Another thing we found is that over 80 kilometers an hour, we weren't able to communicate that clearly. I don't know if this is a 5G intercom thing or whether it's actually to do with the microphones of the device, but I will say the app gives you a lot of fine tuning in terms of mic sensitivity and all of that, which we didn't play around with. So there probably is a way to get that to work, especially if you deep dive into the app and actually play around with those settings. So there are a few limitations to using a 5G intercom over the mesh intercom, but the pro is so big that it outweighs all of these cons by a mile, by a landslide. The thing with using 5G intercom is, yes, it depends on your reception. So if reception's spotty, it'll drop out here and there, but it'll always reconnect as soon as you're back in reception. And the biggest thing is that you can communicate from anywhere as long as you both have reception. We could be suburbs away and still be chatting because it's using cellular data and not a point-to-point contact system like mesh does. And this is invaluable. You know, the moment someone takes a wrong turn or they come off their bike or they stop their bike and you zoom on ahead, you can still communicate. And that is massive. Let's talk about the controls on both of these devices. I will say the Q8 takes the win here, and that's because these buttons on the EJEAS X10 are quite fiddly. Now they look big, but you actually have to press these tiny little ridges for the buttons to activate. You can't just press the big button itself. I personally wear leather gloves on a motorbike no matter what, and it's really difficult sometimes to activate those buttons. This volume wheel is all good, but when you're wearing a leather glove, it's really hard to click it sometimes. Whereas the Q8 has a massive giant click wheel in the middle, and it has a very tactile button here, neither of which are hard to find, even when you're wearing leather gloves. But that could be a personal preference. I personally much prefer the Q8's controls over the X10s. I found them easier to operate with full gauntlet gloves, leather gloves, and just a little more intuitive. I think the EJEAS X10 and the EJEAS Q8 are both fantastic products, but they have their distinct differences that make them slightly more suitable for different audiences. The EJEAS X10 is this feature-rich device which offers a more holistic experience compared to the Q8. It's got newer mesh technology which offers better range, better connection, and the ability to link up 10 riders in total as opposed to 6. The voice assistant actually worked for me, which means I can control my phone without having to ever remove it from my pocket. It's even got its own voice assistant, which I think is pretty cool. It's got a few extra nifty features like music sharing, not something I'd personally use, but could be of use to some of you out there. So it's a pretty strong tool when paired with your phone, the phone's voice assistant, the EJEAS voice assistant, and the EJEAS app. This does, however, mean it's a little more complicated, and you may run into some issues like I did, for example, with the Bluetooth repairing scenario. You'll also need to download the app for the first time setup, even if you don't plan on using its features. Now, the EJEAS Q8 is a solid, reliable unit that just gets the job done. It's perfect for listening to music and navigation while you're out on your solo rides. It's a solid self-contained unit, and it's got better battery life and better sound quality than some of the cheaper alternatives you'll find online. And it does also have its Bluetooth and mesh capabilities for when you do want to go on a group ride. As mentioned, I also think the controls are a little more intuitive and a little better suited for leather gloves than the X10s. But at the end of the day, its mesh capabilities are inferior to the X10, and it's just not as feature heavy or as modern as the X10 is. So I think it's a matter of weighing up your needs and choosing one of these devices based on your use case. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I will catch you on the next one.
You say you got them guns, but I've never seen you bang. You say you got them drugs, but I've never seen you slang.